Recently, I made a couple videos talking about the most ambitious roller coaster by each major coaster manufacturer, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to look at theme park chains and ask the same question: what is their most ambitious coaster? So let's waste no further time and start with Disney. Disney is known for their theming above all other things. And a lot of the time when it comes to Disney, it's not necessarily an ambitious ride for roller coasters, it's more so for dark rides. But they do have some good coasters for this list nonetheless. My choice for Disney was Expedition Everest at Disney's Animal Kingdom in Orlando, Florida. This ride is an absolute beast, and it cost $100 million to build, at the time the most expensive coaster ever. This is one of my favorite coasters of all time, and the theming is impeccable from start to finish. The theming in the queue line is ridiculous. The amount of detail is awesome. And I honestly wouldn't care getting stuck in this line just because of how much stuff there is to look at. So the queue is immersive, and then you get to the actual ride, and this ride is sure a good one. After a pre-lift section, you extend a tall lift hill before coming to the top of Mount Everest. When you reach the top, it holds a surprise for first-time riders, sending you backwards in the mountain through a pretty intense helix. It's one of the more intense moments on a Disney coaster, and this is why I think this is more of a thrill ride than a family ride for the most part. You then come out of the mountain and zip down the drop at a speed of over 50 miles an hour, and from here you wind in and out of the mountain before coming to the brakes. This coaster is just absolutely huge, and the fact that they built a mountain as big as this blows my mind. But hey, no complaints from me. Now let's look at some other Disney coasters that I considered. Firstly, Tron Light Cycle Power Run, soon to be at Disney's Magic Kingdom, and already located in China. This coaster is very big and looks very cool, but I don't think it's nearly as ambitious as Expedition Everest. There's a reason that Expedition Everest cost $100 million and Tron did not. Finally, I want to throw Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland out there as well. This ride, when it opened in 1959, was the world's first tubular steel roller coaster, which is pretty ambitious if you ask me. And like Expedition Everest, they had to build a whole mountain for this ride, so I definitely think you could consider Matterhorn Disney's most ambitious coaster, but I'd put it at number 2. Disney's partner in crime when it comes to making themed experiences is Universal. Well, I guess I should say main competitor. Nonetheless, Universal has a lot of great coasters that I could consider for this list. Shout out to Velocicoaster, but I don't think that's quite there. One I nearly chose was Battlestar Galactica at Universal Studios Singapore. This coaster is a work of engineering, no doubt, as the human side races the Cylon side. But when I was watching a POV, I noticed a big difference between the side. The blue side is a lot more thrilling than the red side. It looks like a very fun attraction. Multiple inversions, a couple fun drops, a couple slow moments, but still, it looks like a pretty thrilling and good time. And the ride's final inversion looks very floaty as well. But then when I looked at the red side is basically just a glorified family coaster. So many slow moments. And it just doesn't feel like a lot happens on the red side. I kind of felt like that they built and designed the blue side first, and then tried to fit the red side around the blue side, and this is what we got. It's still very cool to look at off-ride, but if both sides were a little more thrilling, then I would have given it more consideration for this video. Ultimately, I went with Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Islands of Adventure. This Intamin launch coaster not only cost $300 million, but it also has 7 launches and is very well themed. Yes, 7 launches. And because of the fact that you can either ride on a motorbike seat or in the sidecar, it provides variety as well. This just looks like an awesome time, and the fact that Universal spent that much money on a launch coaster is insane. But outside of the long wait it garners and some of the downtime it has, I don't think anyone is complaining. And in addition to that, spoiler alert here, it has a backwards section and a drop track. Like, what? This ride is the full package, and I know I'm going to be absolutely stoked when I get an opportunity to ride it. Cedar Fair had a lot to pick from, but in the end it came down to a couple coasters from Ohio for me. One of them I was considering was Top Thrill Dragster, the Stratacoaster. But in the end, that's not the one I chose. The one I chose was Millennium Force in the same park, the world's first Giga Coaster. If you're unfamiliar, a Giga Coaster is a roller coaster that stands over 300 feet in the air. More specifically, 300 to 399 feet. It created an unimaginable amount of buzz when it opened, and it is still considered one of the best roller coasters in the park and in the world. Intamin, hats off. You're one of the most ambitious manufacturers out there, and I think your Giga Coaster in Millennium Forest is the most ambitious coaster that Cedar Fair has ever done. There are certainly other rides that you could argue, but breaking the 300-foot barrier was just something that no one even thought was possible. And it feels fitting that Cedar Fair's most ambitious coaster is at Cedar Point, the roller coaster capital of the world. For Six Flags, I also had a lot to pick from. I considered a couple that didn't quite make the cut, like Superman Escape from Krypton at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I also had to consider Kingda Ka, the world's tallest roller coaster located at Six Flags Great Adventure. But in the end, I went with Aerodynamics' most ambitious coaster, X2, also at Six Flags Magic Mountain. I'll try not to repeat everything I said in my other video relating to ambitious coasters, but X2 is just an insane ride, and it was the world's first fourth dimension roller coaster. Hypercoaster heights and speeds are one thing, but when you pair crazy flipping and sometimes effects with it, it's unbelievable. Of course, this ride originally opened as X with one of the most horrid paint jobs I've ever seen in my life. But now, the paint job makes it look as intimidating and as terrifying as it should. In all seriousness, X2 is an insane ride. Merlin Entertainment owns all the Legoland parks, and while those parks don't have anything for this list, some of their major parks do, like Colossus at Heidi Park is one I considered the Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster. Another one I wanted to throw out was Galactica at Alton Towers, the world's first B&M flying coaster. This ride model completely took off, and we have B&M, Galactica, and Alton Towers to thank for it. But there really wasn't a doubt in my mind. I was going Smiler at Alton Towers all the way. This ride probably has the creepiest theme out of any roller coaster in the world. But besides that, that's not why it got nominated for this list. It has the world's most inversions on a coaster with 14. It's pretty much just inversion after inversion after inversion after inversion because it doesn't even have 4,000 feet of track. Great work of engineering here by Gerstlauer, and I think it's the most ambitious coaster Merlin has ever added to a park. I'm sure the biggest struggle with this ride is walking straight afterward because of how many upside down moments there are. For many years, I wouldn't have even included SeaWorld Entertainment when talking about this video idea, but now they are really in the roller coaster game, no question about it. And there were a few that came to mind for me. Alpengeist is a huge B&M invert nearly at Hypercoaster heights. And Iron Gwazi looks like a top tier RMC down there in Tampa. My choice though is back at Busch Gardens Williamsburg with a pretty new ride, Pantheon. This Intamin launch coaster seems to have it all. A couple inversions, a couple of airtime moments, a swing launch sequence. From what I've heard, the theming is pretty bad, as in there isn't any, which is a shame because I really think you could have some cool theming for a ride like this. But whatever the case, I still think Pantheon is the most ambitious coaster for SeaWorld. When SeaWorld announced this coaster many years ago, as it originally was supposed to open in 2020, but you know how that went, it was kinda eye-opening, like wow, SeaWorld is actually willing to add a roller coaster like this. They did, and of course, it was Swiss manufacturer Intamin who was the company to get the job done. Herschend is a smaller chain, but they still have some very ambitious coasters. One that comes to mind is Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, the world's first, but no longer only, Mack Rides Extreme spinning coaster. Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City also came to mind. This is a wood coaster that does things wood coasters aren't supposed to do, like flipping riders upside down multiple times, for instance. However, let's stick with the RMC topper track and talk about Lightning Rod at Dollywood. In all honesty, there was never a contest for me. This was the world's first launched wooden roller coaster, and in fact it may have been a little too ambitious because of all the downtime it's sustained over its time. Not to mention the terrain layout and the quadruple down, this ride is just bonkers. Forget Herschend, I think this is one of the most ambitious coasters ever built, and I can't wait to ride it. So, There you have it, the most ambitious coasters from each major chain. And there were certainly some crazy rides on this list.